Well, hello, thank you for joining me. Please subscribe to my channel on the bottom left here. It'd be really good to have you as a regular visitor. Subjects today really are going to be the IOPC winning their appeal for the investigation of the police officer who was involved in the shooting, and also a little bit of Jeremy Vine. Because Lawrence Fox was in there, and he was on there with Yasmin I think Alibhai-Brown, I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's a regular on there. She's a Muslim woman, and she's not shy about coming forward. And they had a bit of a, they say it was a falling out. I think it was a falling out on one side. But anyway, those two aspects. So the first one I really think was of interest was W80, Whiskey 80 decision. So that's the code name, if you like, for the officer who was involved in the shooting of Jermaine Baker, and this was in 2015. So people should realise that these things drag on forever. Police officers are always on hold, their careers are on hold, their lives are on hold. They continually just have the drip feed of negative press against them, and it basically destroys a lot of good people. Now, first of all, any police shooting, because I was a firearms officer myself for 25 years, any police shooting, Human Rights Act says by a state, like a country, there has to be a proportionate investigation. And proportionality is the key thing, because do you throw everything at it until you get some sort of result, even though you're probably not going to get a result, and find every little legal loophole and appeal it again? Or are you just going to look at it to say, right, okay, what's fair here? So a firearms officer does an immense amount of training. They do huge amounts of, as I was involved with scenarios after scenarios, and it's not all guns, it's a scenario which they are expecting you to go in very low key. Officer presence, verbal communication. Can you just bring them down? But are you keeping the place safe? Are you keeping yourself safe rather, and are you keeping the public safe? And so you would delay as much as possible causing any harm to a subject if there's no need to push forward and cause an issue. Now with Jermaine Baker, he was involved in, and I don't know his previous, I don't know if he was massively in the gangs, but he was definitely in some gang that was part of one too, and I don't know if he was youthful, trying to get a name in there. I genuinely don't know, and to be honest, it's irrelevant. He was one of a few guys that were there to spring two Turkish guys who'd been convicted for firearms offences and that were leaving court. And the issue there was there was a shooting, and he tragically died, because any life is just a waste, quite frankly, to lose someone. So the file was completed and it went to CPS, and the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, said no case to answer. Okay, so they're happy that there's no criminal offence, there's no murder, there's no manslaughter. So what happened then? Well, the Met were directed by the IOPC, the Independent Office of Police Conduct, who were the IPCC, just basically changed the name and not a lot more, unfortunately. And they were directed to hold gross misconduct proceedings against that armed firearms officer. That means there's a good chance you could lose your job on that one. It's not misconduct where it's management advice and this, that and the other. Gross misconduct, you could lose your job on that one. So then you've got, so the Met thought, no, you're not going to force us to do this, because we're looking at, there's no evidence to suggest that. There's nothing that we can push forward for that. So we're not going to do it. So they appealed this direction, and they were successful by the High Court. And the High Court said, yeah, IOPC, you're out of order. Stop making them do it. And then there was a big argument of what level of proof you needed to have, and the IOPC fight for a lesser level of proof that you need. And it went to the appeal court, and the appeal court found in favour of the IOPC. So now this officer, 5 years later, is now facing, or could well face, gross misconduct. And I doubt they'll go through all the appeal procedures if they didn't continue with that. And the quote by the court, and this is 3 judges, they describe them top, high people, who I'd be interested to know. I mean, you know, I've got to be very careful. I don't want to criticise the judicial system here, but it is definitely a court of law. It's not a court of justice necessarily. I've said that to many a grieving elderly lady whose late husband's war medals had been stolen by some little oik, and we knew who it was. We knew he wasn't going to prison time and time again, and he was committing all these burglaries. And when you've sat by a blubbing 85-year-old, it is quite frankly just traumatic. It's awful. So it was a court of law, not a court of justice, and no doubt the defence solicitor was very pleased that they won the day and they got this chap off on the other one. But the appeal court said it was wrong to say there is no misconduct wherever an officer used proportionate force based on an honest belief that he was in danger. So they're saying, so even though the officer used proportionate force, okay, and even though it was from an honest belief, honestly held belief, that he was in danger, they're still saying if the officer made an honest mistake, the disciplinary panel must still determine whether the use of force was reasonable in all the circumstances. So basically this means that whenever there's a shooting, that officer not only will have the stress of dealing with being found, you know, no case to answer, it's going to be a rubber stamp every time now to stick them on for gross misconduct. And this is going to drag on forever for those officers. It's disgusting. We all know that if there's a clear case of an officer going down the road and just shooting someone in murder, they should be stuck on for murder, quite frankly. But these scenarios, I've been in a position twice in my career where I was a nano for shooting someone. And it wasn't shall I or shan't I? It was, if that gun just raises one more degree towards me, I'm shooting. I pulled the slack off the trigger. The red dot was darting around his chest in my scope. And the fact that he just dropped that weapon meant that I didn't shoot him dead. The rules are simple. If I'm in danger or if a member of the public is in danger, I shoot them dead. Then I would have been in for 6 years of merry hell, as the best barristers in the country would claim that I was overzealous in what I did and that there were other options available. Every microsecond of decision making by those officers is ripped apart for days on end for each microsecond. I've had experience of it with my colleagues. It's miserable. And that's why the human rights said it should be proportionate. And if there's no obvious case of murder, quite frankly, then if you want people to be firearms officers and save your backside when it's all going tits up, then you don't look for scapegoats and try to stick them in prison like the IOPC are. When was the last time they felt a bit of an adrenaline as someone came up to their face and started shouting at them, for God's sake? When did that happen? They'd probably poo their pants, quite frankly, wouldn't they? Let alone going into what is known as a very violent situation. I'm not talking about this particular instance, but it seems fair. I don't know the details, so I'm not affecting the case or any gross misconduct in the future. But any violent situation, you're going in there. But you will be relying on your training. And those 2 times where I nearly pulled the trigger, I wasn't thinking, am I going to be in the shit here if I pull this? Do I really think I could take a man's life? Do you know what? It was relevant. It didn't come into my mind. It felt like another scenario, like one of the thousands of scenarios. So I knew what to do when that happened. I knew what to do when this happened. I knew that I would be using proportionality at all times. Was it necessary? Is it justified? You know? Am I being accountable? Well, there's a helicopter above me filming the bloody thing as well, for goodness sake. So there we go. Remember, policing is not a precise subject, right? It's not a precise science, I should say. And I think so many people think they've watched too many films where the hero comes in and does a few moves and they're arrested. And hurrah! Fighting's messy and it's not a precise science. And I just see this time and time again from these armchair experts. Frustrating. And yeah, it's a court of law, not necessarily court of justice. That's the thing. But anyway, very quickly, Jeremy Vine and with the guest with Lawrence Fox, who is he's got £5 million for the Reclaim Party. I quite like the sound of them, I must admit. And it's not Reclaim for Muslims or anything like that. It's nothing racist like that. It's Reclaim the art of free speech, so we can discuss things, so we can actually talk about what we want in this country without having the race card thrown at everyone. I am all for open, honest discussion. And unfortunately, with this new thing that was on, this new thing it's been around, white privilege, for example, I've had a good think of that. I've looked up on it, I've read up on it, I've seen a few things, and I think it's pretty fair to say, yeah, well, it might be white privilege sometime, it might be black privilege on another. I think there's, in this day and age, when all the laws go for equality, for sexual preference, for race, age, it's as fair as it ever has been. And this is the problem when people were looking for the rights, equal rights for everyone. When they got them, they had nowhere to go, and they just kept on going. And this is what they're picking up. White privilege. Okay, so why are we not thinking of white privilege? I might have white privilege one day, and I can't think particularly when. I think nowadays there's black privilege, you could say, because there's certain opportunities for people in minority groups because they want to build the numbers up, and if you're equally qualified, and some would argue if you're not quite so equally qualified, then the chances are that you will have to give your position up in a interview, so to speak. You go for the interview, but you probably might not get the job. I don't think that's arguable. It's openly positive discrimination, they called it. I think they call it something else now. But okay, I can live with that, that's fine. But what about, why are we concentrating on white privilege? Why not female privilege, male privilege? Okay, so not just male privilege, but there's some jobs out there that I would be looking at not being quite so successful for if I was being a male. But this is what it's like. And then, but age. So what my argument is, who's more privileged? A young black male or an older or an old white female going for a job where you need a little bit of fitness? So what I'm saying is everyone in every variant of our lives has a certain privilege, be it our sex, age. I don't think colour so much now. And if it is privilege, I know I'm not allowed to say because I've never been black and things, because that's what I've been accused of as well. I just want a fair society, and I just want to be able to talk about it, have an open discussion so that we can be honest. I had a chat on Twitter recently. It's a risky thing to do, but I haven't got a boss, and I don't care if people throw accusations at me anymore. I couldn't care. I think we're getting there, to be honest, and especially with people like Lawrence Fox, he's very educated, he's very clever, he's very intelligent. And at first you might think, because he's so intelligent, he's white, people might dismiss him, well, you're the ultimate white privilege. But he's very just fair, you know? He's not accusing the other person. And to be honest, Yasmin let herself down big stuff. She just lost it. She absolutely lost it. And then she called him a racist bully, of which it was the only time he raised an eyebrow and said, I was wondering who I was going to be the first person to sue, and it seems like it's you, unless you give me a full apology and you withdraw the accusation. But this is the problem, shutting down conversation, shutting down discussion, so we can get to the root of any issues that are there. And sometimes I don't think the issues are there as strong as people might think. But it's very much, especially younger people, I think, I better get onto that side of the argument, because then it will just give me an easier life. Anyway. We're getting there. Anyway, subscribe, bottom left, give us your comments, good or bad, and I'll really look forward to hearing from you, and have a good one. Cheers, guys.